For centuries, the Kryloth Dominion and the Zainari Collective had waged a war so vast, so destructive, that entire star systems were reduced to ash in its wake. The Kryloth, a race of biomechanical warriors, sought to assimilate all life into their hive-mind empire. The Zainari, ethereal beings of pure energy, fought to preserve the sanctity of individuality and free will. Both sides were evenly matched, their technologies and strategies evolving in a deadly dance of annihilation, but neither could have predicted the arrival of the third player in their cosmic game. On the edge of the Andarian Nebula, a small, unassuming vessel drifted silently through the void. Its hull was scarred, its engines sputtering, and its crew, a ragtag group of humans, was barely clinging to life. They called their ship the Odyssey, a name that now felt bitterly ironic. They had been explorers once, venturing into the unknown in search of new worlds and new civilizations. But the unknown had found them first. Captain Elias Voss stood on the bridge, his gaunt face illuminated by the faint glow of the control panels. His once pristine uniform was now tattered, stained with sweat and blood. Behind him, his crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational. Dr. Mira Koval, the ship's chief scientist, monitored the failing life support systems. Lieutenant Jackson Reed, the pilot, struggled to keep the ship on course, and in the corner, young Ensign Lila Chen, the communications officer, stared at the static-filled screen, hoping for a signal that never came. "Captain," Mira said, her voice trembling, "we're running out of time. If we don't find a habitable system soon—" "I know," Elias interrupted, his voice steady but heavy with exhaustion. "We'll find something. We have to." But deep down, he wasn't so sure. They had been adrift for months, their supplies dwindling, their hope fading. The Andarian Nebula was a graveyard of dead stars and barren planets, a place where no one ventured willingly. And yet here they were, the last remnants of humanity, fighting to survive in a galaxy that seemed determined to destroy them. It was then that the sensors picked up the anomaly. "Captain!" Jackson shouted, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I'm picking up a massive energy signature just beyond the nebula. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Elias rushed to the console, his heart pounding. The readings were off the charts, a swirling vortex of energy, pulsing with an otherworldly light. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. "What is it?" Lila asked, her eyes wide with fear and curiosity. "I don't know," Elias admitted, "but it's our only shot. Jackson, set a course for that anomaly, full speed ahead." As the Odyssey hurtled toward the unknown, none of them could have imagined the role they were about to play in the galaxy's deadliest war. The anomaly was a rift, a tear in the fabric of space-time. As the Odyssey approached, the crew felt a strange pull, as if the very laws of physics were bending around them. The ship shuddered violently, its systems flickering on and off. Elias gripped the console, his knuckles white, as he shouted orders to his crew. "Brace for impact, Mira, reroute all power to the shields. Jackson, keep us steady." But it was no use. The rift swallowed them whole, and for a moment, everything went dark. When the crew regained consciousness, they found themselves in a place unlike anything they had ever seen. The stars here burned with an unnatural brilliance, their light refracted through swirling clouds of cosmic dust. In the distance, they could see the remnants of a battle, shattered ships and debris floating aimlessly in the void. "Where are we?" Lila whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," Mira replied, her eyes scanning the readings. "But the energy signatures, they're unlike anything in our database. This place, it's not part of our galaxy." Before they could process the implications, a new threat emerged. From the shadows of the debris field, a massive Kryloth warship emerged, its biomechanical hull pulsating with a sickly green light. It was unlike any ship they had ever encountered, its design both organic and mechanical, as if it had been grown rather than built. "Captain, we've got company," Jackson said, his voice tense. "Evasive maneuvers," Elias ordered. "Mira, can we jump back through the rift?" "Negative," Mira replied. "The rift's energy signature is unstable. If we try to go back, we risk tearing the ship apart." As the Kryloth ship closed in, its weapons charging, Elias realized they had only one option: fight. "Arm the plasma cannons," he said, his voice firm. "We're not going down without a fight." The battle was fierce and chaotic. The Odyssey was outgunned and outmatched, but the crew fought with everything they had. Mira worked tirelessly to keep the ship's systems online, while Jackson piloted with a skill born of desperation. Lila managed to hack into the Kryloth's communications, giving them a brief advantage. But it wasn't enough. Just as the Kryloth ship prepared to deliver the final blow, a new player entered the fray. A Zinari fleet, their ships glowing with an ethereal light, descended upon the Kryloth with a fury that was both beautiful and terrifying. The Kryloth ship was quickly overwhelmed, its hull torn apart by the Zinari's energy-based weapons. As the dust settled, the crew of the Odyssey found themselves face to face with their saviors. A holographic projection appeared on the bridge, revealing a Zinari commander, a being of pure light, its form shifting and shimmering like a living star. "Humans," the commander said, its voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "You have entered a war that was not meant for you. But perhaps you are the key to ending it." The Zinari commander's holographic form shimmered like a living constellation, its voice resonating with an otherworldly cadence. "Humans," it repeated, the word carrying both curiosity and weight. "You have entered a war that was not meant for you, but perhaps you are the key to ending it." Captain Elias Voss stood tall, though his body ached from the battle. His crew, Mira, Jackson, and Lila, exchanged uneasy glances. They were explorers, not soldiers, and the idea of being the key to anything felt absurd. Yet the Zinari's presence was undeniable, their ships glowing with an ethereal light that seemed to defy the darkness of space. "Who are you?" Elias asked, his voice steady despite the storm of questions in his mind. "I am Elion," the commander replied, its form shifting fluidly. Co-strategist of the Zinari Collective, we have fought the Kryloth Dominion for centuries, a war that has consumed countless lives and worlds. Your arrival here, it is no accident." Mira stepped forward, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. "What do you mean, no accident? We were pulled through a rift, a tear in space-time. We didn't choose to come here." Alion's light pulsed faintly, as if considering her words. "The rift was not of our making, nor the Kryloth's. It is a phenomenon we do not fully understand, but its appearance coincides with your arrival. This suggests a connection, one that may prove vital to our cause." Elias frowned, his mind racing. "And what exactly is your cause? Why should we trust you?" Alion's form shifted, projecting a holographic map of the galaxy. It was a tapestry of light and shadow, with vast swathes of space marked by destruction. "The Kryloth seek to assimilate all life into their hive mind," Alion explained. "They see individuality as a weakness, diversity as a flaw. We, the Zinari, fight to preserve the freedom of all sentient beings. But the war has reached a stalemate. Neither side can gain the upper hand." Lila, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "And you think we can help? We're just humans. We don't have your technology or your powers." Alion's light brightened, almost as if it were smiling. "It is precisely your humanity that makes you unique. Your resilience, your creativity, your ability to adapt. These are traits the Kryloth cannot comprehend. They are your greatest strength." Elias exchanged a glance with his crew. They were battered, exhausted, and far from home. But the alternative, being stranded in a war-torn galaxy with no allies, was unthinkable. "What do you need from us?" Elias asked, his voice firm. "Your ingenuity," Alion replied. "Your ability to think beyond the confines of logic and reason. Together, we can devise a strategy to end this war once and for all." The crew of the Odyssey was taken aboard a Zinari flagship, a vessel that seemed more like a living organism than a machine. Its walls pulsed with soft light, and the air hummed with a low, resonant energy. Mira marveled at the technology, her scientific mind racing to understand its principles. Jackson, ever the pragmatist, focused on the ship's defenses, while Lila studied the Zinari's communication systems, her fingers dancing over unfamiliar controls. Elian led them to a vast chamber filled with holographic displays, and Zinari, operatives. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of centuries of war palpable in the air. "This is our war room," Elian explained. "Here we plan our strategies and coordinate our efforts. But despite our best efforts, we have been unable to break the Kryloth's defenses." Mira stepped forward, her eyes scanning the displays. "Their hive mind. It's their greatest strength, but also their greatest weakness. If we can disrupt it, even temporarily, we could cripple their forces." Elian's light flickered with interest. "Explain." "The hive mind relies on a network of interconnected nodes," Mira said, her voice growing more confident. "If we can identify and destroy the central node, the entire network could collapse." Elian considered this, its form shifting thoughtfully. "It is a sound strategy, but the central node is heavily guarded, deep within Kryloth territory. Reaching it would require a coordinated assault, one that would stretch our resources to their limits." Elias stepped forward, his jaw set. "We'll do it. We've come this far. We're not turning back now." Elian's light brightened, a sign of approval. "Then we will prepare, but know this: the Kryloth will not yield easily. They will fight with everything they have." As the crew of the Odyssey worked with the Zinari to refine their plan, tensions began to surface. Among the Zinari, there were those who doubted the humans' capabilities. Vorin, a high-ranking Zinari commander, was particularly vocal in his skepticism. "They are a liability," Vorin said during a council meeting, his form flickering with disdain. "A primitive species with no understanding of the stakes. We cannot afford to waste resources on them." Alien's light pulsed with authority. "It is precisely because they do not understand the stakes that they may succeed where we have failed. They see possibilities where we see only obstacles." The debate grew heated, threatening to undermine the alliance. But before the conflict could escalate, the Kryloth launched a massive offensive, targeting a key Zinari stronghold. The crew of the Odyssey found themselves thrust into the heart of the battle, their ship retrofitted with Zinari technology. As they fought alongside their new allies, they realized the true extent of their potential. Kryloth warships descended like a swarm of locusts, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with a sickly green light. The Zinari fleet, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, illuminating the darkness with bursts of light and fire. Amid the chaos, the Odyssey darted through the fray, its retrofitted hull glowing faintly with Zinari technology. Captain Elias Voss gripped the armrests of his command chair, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Jackson, keep us out of their firing lines. Mira, how's our shield integrity?" "Holding for now," Mira replied, her fingers flying over the console. "But if we take another direct hit, we're done for." Ensign Lila Chen, her face pale but determined, monitored the Kryloth communications. "They're coordinating their attacks through the hive mind. If we can disrupt it, even for a moment, we might give the Zinari an opening." Elias nodded, his mind racing. "Mira, any progress on that disruption plan?" Mira's eyes lit up. "I think so. If we can amplify the Odyssey's energy signature and target their central node, we might be able to overload their network. But it's risky. It could fry our systems or worse." "Do it," Elias said without hesitation. "We don't have a choice." As Mira worked to recalibrate the ship's systems, Elias turned to Jackson. "Get us as close to the Kryloth, flagship as you can. We need to be in range for this to work." Jackson grinned, his hands steady on the controls. "You got it, Captain. Hold on tight." The Odyssey surged forward, weaving through the chaos of battle. Kryloth fighters pursued them, their weapons blazing, but Jackson's piloting skills kept them one step ahead. The ship shuddered as a plasma bolt grazed its hull, but Mira's modifications held firm. "We're in range," Mira shouted. "Initiating." The disruption sequence. A low hum filled the ship as energy surged through its systems. The crew braced themselves, their hearts pounding in unison. Outside, a pulse of light erupted from the Odyssey, rippling through the void like a shockwave. For a moment, the Kryloth ships faltered. Their movements became erratic, their weapons firing aimlessly. The hive mind, momentarily disrupted, left them vulnerable. "It's working!" Lila exclaimed, her voice filled with hope. But the victory was short-lived. The Kryloth flagship, a massive biomechanical behemoth, began to recover. Its central node, though damaged, was not destroyed. "We need to hit it again," Mira said, her voice tense. "But the ship can't handle another surge. We'll tear ourselves apart." Elias clenched his fists, his mind racing. "Then we'll have to get closer. Jackson, take us in." Jackson's grin faded, replaced by a look of grim determination. "You sure about this, Captain?" "Do it," Elias said, his voice firm. The Odyssey plunged toward the Kryloth flagship, its hull groaning under the strain. The crew held their breath as the massive ship loomed closer, its pulsating hull filling the viewscreen. "Now, Mira!" Elias shouted. Mira activated the disruption sequence, sending another pulse of energy rippling through the void. This time, the effect was catastrophic. The Kryloth flagship shuddered violently, its hull cracking and splintering as the hive-mind network collapsed. But the victory came at a cost. The Odyssey's systems overloaded, sending sparks flying across the bridge. The ship lurched violently, its engines sputtering. "We're losing power," Jackson shouted, struggling to keep the ship steady. "Eject the core," Mira ordered. "If it blows, we're done for." Elias hesitated for only a moment before giving the order. "Do it," with a final surge of energy. The Odyssey ejected its overloaded core, sending it hurtling toward the Kryloth flagship. The resulting explosion lit up the void, tearing the flagship apart in a blinding flash of light. As the dust settled, the crew of the Odyssey found themselves adrift, their ship barely functional. But the battle was far from over. Aliens. Holographic form appeared on the bridge, its light flickering faintly. "You have done what we could not," it said, its voice filled with awe. "The Kryloth fleet is in disarray, but this is only the beginning." Elias nodded, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. "What's next?" "The Kryloth will regroup," Alien replied. "Their hive mind is resilient, but now, thanks to you, we have a chance to strike at their heart." Mira stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "If we can locate their central node, we can destroy it for good, but we'll need more than just the Odyssey to pull it off." Alien's light pulsed with approval. "The Zainari will provide whatever resources you need, but time is of the essence. The Kryloth will not remain vulnerable for long." As the crew of the Odyssey prepared for the next phase of their mission, they knew the stakes had never been higher. They had proven their worth in battle, but the war was far from over. The Kryloth central node was a fortress, hidden deep within the heart of their territory. It was a massive structure, its biomechanical walls pulsating with a sickly green light. Surrounding it was a fleet of warships, their weapons primed and ready. The Zinari fleet, though bolstered by their recent victory, was still outnumbered, but they had one advantage: the element of surprise. Captain Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The ship had been repaired and upgraded with Zainari technology, its hull now gleaming with an ethereal light. But even with the upgrades, the mission ahead was fraught with danger. "This is it," Elias said, his voice steady. "We take out that node and the war ends, but getting there won't be easy." Mira Koval, her hands resting on the console, nodded. "The node is protected by a network of energy shields. We'll need to disable them before we can strike." Jackson Reed, his fingers dancing over the controls, grinned. "Piece of cake, just another day in the life of the Odyssey." Lila. Chen, her eyes scanning the Kryloth communications, frowned. "They're already regrouping. If we don't move fast, we'll lose our window." Elias turned to Alien, whose holographic form stood beside him. "Are your forces ready?" Aliens. Light pulsed faintly. "We are. But the Kryloth will not yield easily. This will be our most dangerous battle yet." Elias nodded, his jaw set. "Then let's get to it." The assault began with a coordinated strike. The Zinari fleet descended upon the Kryloth defenses, their energy weapons blazing. The Odyssey, flanked by a squadron of Zinari fighters, darted through the chaos, its target clear, the central node. "Jackson, Get us as close as you can, Elias ordered. Mira, be ready to disable those shields. Jackson's hands moved with precision, guiding the ship through a maze of enemy fire. The Kryloth fighters pursued them, their weapons blazing, but the Zynari fighters provided cover, their energy beams cutting through the enemy ranks. "Shields are down!" Mira shouted as the Odyssey approached the node. "We're in!" The ship descended toward the node, its hull groaning under the strain. The crew braced themselves as the ship touched down on the node's surface, its landing gear locking into place. "Let's move," Elias said, grabbing a plasma rifle from the weapons locker. "We don't have much time." The crew disembarked, their boots clanging against the node's metallic surface. The air was thick with the acrid smell of ozone, and the walls pulsed with a faint, rhythmic hum. "This way," Mira said, leading the group toward the node's core. "We need to plant the charges at the central nexus." As they moved deeper into the node, they encountered resistance. Kryloth drones, their mechanical limbs whirring, emerged from the shadows, their weapons firing. The crew fought back, their plasma rifles cutting through the enemy ranks. "Keep moving," Elias shouted, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. The group pressed on, their progress slowed but not stopped. Finally, they reached the central nexus, a massive chamber filled with pulsating organic machinery. At its center was the hive mind core, a towering structure of flesh and metal. "This is it," Mira said, her voice filled with awe. "The heart of the Kryloth hive mind." Elias nodded, his eyes scanning the room. "Plant the charges. We need to make this count." As Mira and Lila worked to set the explosives, Elias and Jackson stood guard, their weapons at the ready. The Kryloth drones were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. "We're not going to make it," Jackson said, his voice tense. "There's too many of them." Elias gritted his teeth, his mind racing. "We have to hold them off just a little longer." But the situation was dire. The drones were closing in, their weapons firing relentlessly. Elias and Jackson fought with everything they had, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Just as all hope seemed lost, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. "Captain, we're here." Elias turned to see Alien and a squad of Zinari warriors entering the room, their energy weapons cutting through the drones with ease. "You're late," Elias said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We had to fight our way in," Alien replied, its light pulsing faintly. "But we're here now." With the Zinari's help, the crew managed to hold off the drones long enough for Mira and Lila to plant the charges. "It's done," Mira said, her voice filled with relief. "We need to get out of here." The group retreated, their footsteps echoing through the node's corridors. As they reached the Odyssey, the charges detonated, sending a shockwave rippling through the node. The crew barely made it back to the ship before the node exploded, its destruction tearing through the Kryloth fleet. The Zinari forces, emboldened by the victory, pressed their advantage, driving the remaining Kryloth forces into retreat. As the dust settled, the crew of the Odyssey stood on the bridge, their faces filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "We did it," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias nodded, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. "We did. But this is just the beginning. The galaxy is vast, and there's still so much out there to discover." Alien's holographic form appeared, its light shimmering with gratitude. "You have changed the course of history. The galaxy will never forget what you have done." Elias turned to his crew, a faint smile on his lips. "Let's go home.